lovely to have you guys here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Okay, so yeah, first of all, thanks for welcoming us to this side of to the city. It's very picturesque. We're a city centre kind of based campus. We decided, I think, Kerry very kindly invited us to talk and share some of the things that we've been doing at the lab at Coventry University. But for me, in order to put the, let's say, our digital agenda into context, we really need to understand, I think, importantly, kind of why and how the lab kind of existed. So I'm going to speak kind of hopefully very briefly. Daniel's incredibly concerned that I have 30 odd slides. He says, how on earth can you do that in 5 to 10 minutes? But let's see if we can. But for those who are unfamiliar with Coventry University, we are, I guess, deemed as a modern university. We have campuses both up in Scarborough, a newly opened campus down in Dagenham, as well as London, and our kind of a subsidiary kind of a college in Coventry. I'm not going to get into the politics of our subsidiaries, as well as our newly formed kind of online kind of initiative. The university is growing at a vast rate. I think we've actually exceeded these sort of figures that we pulled from kind of the Times Higher Education, in that we are increasingly seeking to sort of grow and engage with, I guess what it means to be a university and to be an accessible university. So I think there are a number of things that we're incredibly proud of that we are trying to do. In this context, I think it's really important, this idea, coming as an academic into this kind of realm, each time you think you've caught up, something suddenly has changed again. So this sense of constantly, I think we've heard about this binary kind of situation, is really something that an academic is facing on a daily kind of basis. At Coventry, we've been engaged, I guess, with a different type of agenda, an agenda that's trying to understand how do we capitalise and live and breathe as part of kind of the web kind of ecosystem, from a range of initiatives that we engaged early on with iTunes U, to the open boundary classes, as just referred to them, with photography and narrative, and Pickbod, etc., as well as a range of kind of living and openly accessible kind of publishing books. My way into this sort of takes me back to, I was an art student kind of in the days where we did foundation, and it was all a year of full discovery. And for me, I think there are lots of really interesting kind of ways of, if we go into this space, that we can perhaps think about what it means to now be an educator at university. So typically you were trained, you were faced with something that you had to respond to at that moment in time, to come up with your way of describing what you saw in front of you. Typically each time somebody would set you a different challenge, which could be to explore a different piece of media, a different way of thinking. You had a challenge of drawing somebody in front of you in 30 seconds. So this way of kind of constantly thinking of how you can invent and change the situation when you're in a classroom was really what we were about. As well as thinking of kind of terms such as assemblage, this idea that we take the everyday and we pull it together to create a new meaning, I think is a really interesting way of how we can think about the tools and digital tools and a classroom kind of experience. It's not all about this high-tech kind of experience. Now here you'll see there's two terms. I used to refer to it as bric-a-brac, and my then professor at the university said, you've got to use a kind of a more academic term. So we can use the term bricolage if we prefer. But this idea that we do it ourselves, we can put these bits and pieces together in order to inform what a classroom experience should be. But I think interestingly, when we bring, I guess, a creative mindset to these challenges that we face, often we focus on the thing in front of us. But this particular example, kind of pulling from the neo-Dada kind of realm of working, the idea here was to focus on the negative, to focus on the things around the thing that we're trying to explore, which gets us thinking not of this space of do we situate ourselves over here or here, but this space where these things come together and we get these amazing kind of reveals. The lab is called the Disruptive Media Learning Lab. And let's be clear, I think there are lots of times internally that very much goes in our favour. But I guess externally and increasingly, as we see by Boris here, it's quite a boring term in this day and age. However, I think for us it's really important that we put this into context. This is about an affirmative practice that gives staff and students alike the space to experiment and think critically about our systems and ideas. So we're not interested in the Christensen sort of concept and relationship to business, but this idea of what it might mean as an affirmative kind of practice. Or as Jim Green very kindly put it in as one of our fellows, disruption is the disruption of a model of thinking and of a culture of accepting. And let's remember, I'm conscious I'm in front of a kind of an audience perhaps of learning technologists and librarians. You know, when we think of disruption and disruptive media, the book most likely is still probably the most disruptive form of kind of media that we exist. As a photographer, I kind of think of this image in the background, and for those of you who don't know, that was Kodak's first digital camera that has changed the entire world for me. So where there used to be this single viewpoint, there are now many thousands of views. And again, if we bring that analogy into a classroom, how do we begin to capitalize upon that? And as Mishka Henner sort of said, in this golden age of perspectives, the infinite array of documents uploaded to the web offer unprecedented opportunities to reveal the workings of our world around us. Now here we're talking in terms of photographs and in terms of photography as a craft, but this could equally apply to what it might be in an educational and a discipline, kind of a non-discipline specific kind of context. But these things aren't new. This idea of the diffusion of useful knowledge has been around since the 1800s. So let's not get tied and bored by this idea of innovation or this idea of the new. What is the next new thing? You know, the lab has faced many of these challenges before. So we are quite proud in trying to situate our workings in that sense. Whereas my, I think, 8-year-old daughter said at the time, who's turning 10 this year and is very much a teenager, who like me often gets phrases wrong. She says, "We do it by purpose, Daddy, do it by purpose." I think that idea that we make conscious decisions every time we go into a classroom is a really important way of thinking, that we don't take things for granted, that we question the situations and scenarios such as this. So the lab, not by design I should say, was given a space at the top of the library in Coventry, and we were then told, what are you going to do with it? The architects came up with some designs, and guess what? It looked pretty much like this room or any room you went into in a library. So we decided to let's have some fun with this. So we created our grass area, which is the closest we would get to a lecture theatre, that has both an emotive kind of response, it has a physical, there is a change in experience. So any member of staff or student entering this space suddenly is conscious of how they behave, of how they work and of how they think. And importantly, when we had our very first kind of governance meeting with the governors of the university, people sat in suits kind of touching and feeling. You don't often find that when you go into a boardroom kind of meeting. And a highly illegible slide for you. The bit that is really, that for me I take away from this is when we first started out with the lab, so we've been running for about 4 years, we did these instants, these one-off kind of moments. So that as you look on your right-hand side, you can see the impact that they had. They were singular, they were not shared, they were not distributed across the wider university. As soon as we began to kind of rethink our kind of methods and our ways of thinking, that when we funded a project, we looked to bring other faculties and other departments involved. We began to disentangle it from a discipline. We then got this much deeper, significant engagement where workshops, people came back time and time again, and suddenly those same initiatives, those same ideas then became shared across the campus as a whole. Hence the thicker lines on the left-hand side. We work both internally in terms of the innovations across the both Coventry, Scarborough, London, etc., but equally work to engage and build capacity of those through externally funded projects. And as a result, I think over the last 3 years, we were one of the most successful non-research centres, and you might as well say a research centre in the university, in bringing in over nearly £10 million of kind of projects. We now work directly with our Deputy Vice-Chancellor, demonstrated here by his Lego figure, which I think is a really important kind of connection and mission. The idea that the university is owning this challenge. It isn't trying to sort of say we will just keep it over here. And our challenge over the next 4 years really is how do we ensure the projects, the ideas that are being generated kind of permeate and connect directly into the university's kind of fabric. So we challenge Ian in his Lego form in order to help us do that. The space, again, trying to shift away from this rectilinear, fixed idea when we were working with kind of stakeholders. really sort of tried to rethink that. So if a student wants to take ownership of their space, all of that furniture needs to move and pass around. Now I can see Daniel burning in my side of my ears because I've got about a minute left. I've said we've been running for a number of years. The space and the projects are all interventions that challenge that kind of the fabric of how the university is working. So if you're booked into teaching on a wooden hill, how is that going to inform and change your practice? How are you going to bring that as part of your doing? I would often kind of describe this as another means of kind of physical campus for the lab. That idea that we have characters in terms of the range of work that we're doing. Our methods bring both serious ideas and kind of playful means of working. So I trained a number of staff in the Lego Serious Play kind of methodology, who then reinterpret that for Lego A Go-Go, and have really brought on and trained a range of staff across the faculties who are now bringing different ways of thinking about what they would do. So these are not solutions, these are not, this is how you do this, but if you're trying to change attitudes and culture, then these are great ways of brokering that. Again, this idea that a serious course is designed over 3 years. Actually, we all know that quiet, considered, intensive time can work. So bringing methodologies such as Sprint have really helped us do that. Creating the project rooms where the students are directly kind of witnessing new curricula kind of being formed. So we don't hide it away in these locked away rooms. This is right in the centre. Appreciating that Coventry isn't the centre of the universe for the university. So having us go out on campus with our bus. Using initiatives such as to engage in serious ideas around copyright and kind of image production, working on external projects such as photomediations, enables very quickly to get people to think about what that means and how we can engage with it. Other forms of playing cards, how do you understand kind of narrative and story building, and the very last one I'm going to talk about, really, I've skipped over those a little bit, is we do engage in what this means to be an academic and to understand when we think about publishing. Again, in that idea of being conscious. Simply we do this because publishers say we should. I think this slide from Bonnie Stewart and Parker Higgins, I think, kind of sits in process. But a publication is something that is ongoing. It isn't something that should be regarded as fixed. And how do we begin to sort of explore that? So we guest edited the Journal of Media Practice and called it, guess what, the Disruptive Journal of Media Practice. We enabled people to contribute to this through processual means. So their articles were, people agreed to share their ideas before they were fully formed. Now that, I think, in the context of academic writing is quite an unnerving sort of process. So we built a community of practitioners who were willing to engage with that. We used hypothesis as a tool to create kind of peer engagement with critical thinking. Now some of those articles, I think it's really interesting when we were writing the introduction to this, is people were saying the biggest thing is the one where it got the most. I think for me it was the one article where somebody wasn't used to working in this way, and the comments that they received through hypothesis directly challenged and informed and changed the direction of that piece. Now for me that transformation is more important than scale of kind of ways of kind of thinking. We engage and work a lot with open badges, and that really is about trying to unleash the digital skills. And on that point I shall hand over to Daniel.
So I'm going to talk very briefly about a few initiatives that are directly connected with the idea of developing digital capabilities or digital fluency. That's the way we tend to call it in Coventry. And the first one is called Coventry Domains, and it's about empowering both academics and students. So this is not something that we have invented. We are trying to extrapolate a model that was pretty much designed in the University of Mary Washington, and now it has been adopted by many other universities, and also connecting with some activities that were happening already in some of our schools, some of the work that Jonathan has mentioned before. We have a relatively long tradition of people working in certain disciplines, providing their students with a hosting space. And what we wanted to do is to open this to a wider range of disciplines. So since last academic year, we started piloting this idea, and also connecting with a range of visiting fellows who have been working shaping this idea of a domains of one's own. So these are some of the people who have been visiting and working with us over the last couple of years. So as I said, we started last year with Coventry Domains focusing mostly on academics, and we wanted to build capacity so this academic year they could bring this opportunity to their students. So you can see how we have been growing this year mostly in terms of staff who felt ready to start exploring these opportunities with their students. And it has been quite interesting, I think. This is a snapshot of the range of courses that are working, trying to embed in the curriculum in different ways the possibility of having a domain of their own. And you can see that because of this tradition, mostly in the School of Media and Performing Arts, and more generally in our Faculty of Arts and Humanities, you will see that they are more represented than others. Probably health and life sciences, because of very, very valid reasons, they are not as engaged because of this idea of generating a public identity, online identity, and how their courses are regulated by external bodies. But we are not being prescriptive in terms of how you have to embed this into your teaching and learning. We are providing quite flexible frameworks, and I won't have time to go into much detail about how this is being adopted in different contexts, but you will see that it can be relevant because of different reasons in different contexts. So beyond making the technology available to our communities, which is basically a rather old technology, because websites and servers, they have been around for a while now, and that's absolutely fine. We have been focusing also on developing a lot of resources, providing also capacity building opportunities, delivering training, workshops, drop-in sessions where our academics can get support and learning these basic skills about how to develop a richer online identity. So if you go to coventry.domains, that's the main website where we are gathering all the information, you will be able to find a lot of documentation, most of which has been customized, localized from other universities, mostly the University of Oklahoma. They have developed, we found that they developed a quite detailed tutorial, so we just adapted. But we have been also developing video tutorials and toolkits, which are, for example, we have a paper-based toolkit which aims to help our students and academics to think of how they would like to build their online identity before even touching a keyboard. So just by downloading something that they can cut with a pair of scissors, they can start thinking about how they want to present themselves online. And we tend to use the framework developed by Mozilla in terms of web literacy because it's more specific. It's not just looking into digital capabilities. It's looking more specifically about different skills and competencies which are relevant in relationship to online behavior. So obviously the right bit is very relevant in this case because domains is helping students to find alternative ways which are not relying on third-party solutions, so they can explore new ways and ways of taking more ownership of how they inhabit the web. But it's also about participation, and most importantly, we are trying, for example, we have also run an experimental module, which is an optional module. It's open to any student on campus, no matter which faculty. We are not just focusing on the technical skills. We are very much concerned with this idea of making them aware of the political economy behind the web. So we have been using these tools, for example, and if you're not familiar with them, I would invite you to explore them. For example, the Facebook data evaluation tool help you realize how Facebook is monetizing your online behavior, or the data selfie will help you understand how Facebook is profiling yourself. So what we want at the end of the day is to provide opportunities for our students and staff to be more conscious of the implications behind the use of technology. So it's not just picking, it's not just a matter of having your own domain because of the sake of it. It's because it provides you with things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do if you were relying on of tools which are commonplace these days. Another initiative that I wanted to mention is Digital Leaders. We piloted this last year, and it's a staff-led initiative working closely with our library. It was about recruiting some students who wanted to help others, help peers develop their digital capability further. And we started delivering some staff-led sessions, introducing to them the very notion of a digital competency, and then through a series of mentoring sessions they were able to define a series of activities that they would be delivering. So they decided to run workshops about LinkedIn, for example, or about how to self-brand yourself through social media, but also they came up with a campaign, for example, in which they produce a set of webcam stickers. So they use this as an opportunity to raise awareness of digital privacy and providing some tips about how to improve your privacy online. So we started attracting 47 students, then we recruited 16 digital leaders, and in the end we had 11 involved and finishing the program, which I think that for a pilot was quite good. And I just wanted to share with you a couple of quotes because they represent quite well what it meant to our students to be involved. So they were very much conscious about the idea of helping other people, not just about developing their own literacy, digital literacy, but also they wanted to, and of course employability is was core, because these days is a key concern to our students. So they always are interested in finding the employability angle. We were encouraging that, but we want them to go beyond that, and we want them to develop as citizens, not just as future employees. And this other quote is also quite interesting because, and now that we are going to be revisiting the pilot and rethinking, even though this flexibility was very appealing to some of them, now that we are going to be revisiting, we are thinking of starting with a more structured approach during the first term, and then during the second term they can come up with their own solutions and approaches to helping peers. So it was quite appealing to some of them, but we felt like we didn't make the most of the opportunity because it was a bit too late when some of them had realized what they were going to do. The academic year was pretty much over. So just to finish, I will mention three other initiatives. We ran a summer school last September, and I have already tweeted a list of 7 principles that were defined by the participants. It was about assessing literacy skills in a digital world. We spent 3 days looking together at different frameworks and models which were aiming to facilitate this type of assessment. If you go to this website, you will find the 7 points, which I think are quite interesting because you are looking at a more localized perspective and how you have to contextualize this type of endeavors. This other initiative is about trying to map how the open web can be used for teaching and learning. And we started, well, last week we participated in the Mozilla Global Sprint, trying to involve people in mapping different solutions. So if you have ideas about how the open web can be helpful for teaching and learning, we encourage you to go to this website and share your thoughts, share your stories, and also provide examples of tools and resources that could be used. And eduhack.eu is an Erasmus Plus project that we have started this year with other partners, 2 other universities, the Politecnico di Torino and UNIR, which is an online university in Spain, and then we have also 2 industry partners. And we are trying to explore new ways of developing capacity building among academics, specifically early career academics. So we are going to be doing a combination of online training with face-to-face events, which so far is being called Edu Hackathon, and we still have to define how this will be looking like in each specific universities, because all of them are very different. We are a kind of modern university, Torino is a more traditional university, and UNIR is a 100% online university. So we will be developing some frameworks and guidance, but it will be up to us individually as partner universities to define how these activities will look like. So that's it. If you have any questions, I think we can take advantage of the fact that now we have the lunch. So depending on how hungry you are, we're going to spend more or less time. And anyway, I'm going to be here both today and tomorrow, so feel free to approach me. Happy to discuss anything.
Anybody have a quick question they wanted to ask? Oh, there.
Hi, thanks for that. It was really interesting. I'm particularly interested in your student group, and where you mentioned it was a pilot, and whether you'll be doing any more with those students or recruiting new ones, and any plans to scale that up.
Yeah, so as I said, we started last year as a pilot. This year we transferred to the library. We haven't been that successful recruiting students this year, so we're going to partner together again for next academic year. The idea is to build capacity so former digital leaders can work with new digital leaders. So there is a transition of expertise, and they work in different cohorts. So it's not just that they have to learn everything from scratch, but the idea is that they will be learning from former students. We are also aiming to connect this with a new type of role, which will be the domains champions. Well, we don't have a name yet, but the idea is people who have been participating in this module, the optional module, some of them will be working with our faculties, so they can help not just peers but also academics to develop their domains. And they will be a specific type of digital leaders. So in our mind, in the future, the digital leaders will be a wide program involving students from different areas, and then within this group there will be people with a specific remit looking at Coventry domains.
I think to add, to that is engagement with students happens across all of our. So I think over that 3 years we ran 60 odd kind of projects. Students are part and parcel of our way of working. So that idea of the work, and students should be paid when they're doing things. I firmly believe if they're helping the university and helping work with their students. So this needs to be scaled. So the module that Daniel kind of gave you as an example is where they can incorporate it into their accreditation for their degree. They can get engaged as student activators. We then have roles for graduate activators. So ideally, for us, this is about trying to create a rolling kind of program of how we can kind of also work with people. I think there was something on Twitter about, do we engage with professional services? Yeah, this is for academics, but if this is around learning and engaging with our wider kind of community, this needs to work with the Students' Union, who we actively kind of work with, as well as our kind of alumni sort of section as well. So for us, this is a whole kind of ecosystem of trying to kind of work and find opportunities to truly engage with, not experiment upon. So, you know, the ones that we're talking about there are very particular and focused around our kind of digital sort of work.
Were there any other quick questions? No? Okay, well, it's lunchtime now, which will be served back out in the main area there. Can we just say a big thank you to Jonathan and Daniel for coming?